Hi everybody, I'm Jacob Mangley, and you are watching Comics Corner, right here on Technicolor Mod. And today, me and my fancy cane are undertaking a wonderful new journey. In celebration of Spider-Man Homecoming, it's Spider-Thon. Yeah, it's both because obviously I want to read a ton of Spider-Man while there's a Spider-Man movie coming out, and being a huge fan of him, and it's also so you, the viewer, can get some recommendations as some good Spider-Man comics to read. And I thought, what better place to start than the very beginning of Peter Parker's career, both publishing-wise and canon-wise. This is Marvel Masterworks Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1. Quick catch up for those who don't know. Marvel Masterworks is how Marvel reprints most of its classics, its stories. Well, I have been doing a different way of it recently with Epic collections that take like 20 of them, cram them into one volume, and give them to you for a big price that it is still a great value. And I highly recommend those. Marvel Masterworks is still something they do, slowly publishing them in these volumes, and occasionally throwing in bonuses that are relevant to the masterwork. Like the Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 2 was included in the Doctor Strange Masterworks I own, because it was a team up between the two characters, and they were created by the same people, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Now for a bit on Spider-Man's in real life origins. Stan Lee had kind of a brainstorm with his pal Steve Ditko. What if we did a different kind of superhero? One no one's ever seen. He's a teenager, but he's not the sidekick. He has a sickly aunt. He's bullied by his peers, and he starts out not using his powers for other people, for himself. But when his uncle dies, he learns responsibility and becomes the Amazing Spider-Man. Steve's like, let's do this, bro. Editorial had a less let's do this, bro stance on this. All the things I mentioned, which are hallmarks of Peter Parker's character, are things they didn't like. They thought fans would hate it, kids would hate it, teens, I don't think they really cared about teens in comic books at the time. Which is shocking given that's now the biggest readership, but it is the 60s and they're sold more on newsstands. However, Stan and Steve got their big shot in the issue 15 of Amazing Fantasy. Why was Spider-Man introduced at the tail end of some random anthology series? Well, honestly, because it was ending, and editorial figured, okay, we'll give it a shot, and no one will probably buy it, and no one will care. The response was the exact opposite, as the fact he's had 6 movies at this point, counting Homecoming, and at least 6 animated series, including one coming up. And I'm definitely miscounting there and not counting ones where he's part of an ensemble. Well, not like Amazing Spider-Man. I think he might have been in Superhero Squad. Well, in Avengers. So he's also appeared in multiple ones that had nothing to do with him. Yeah. It became a big success, got greenlit, and here we are. So how do these old issues hold up? Well, they held up to old me. Well, honestly, pretty well. They held up to me as a teenager almost a decade ago when I read them, because in my grandma's newspaper they happened to be putting half issues of Spider-Man in his inserts, and it was a fun thing while it lasted. And almost all of those are here, and they're pretty good. I didn't remember them very well, but they hold up. They have their problems, and we'll get to those. But first, I want to focus on the triumphs. Now, I gave a pretty good setup. Peter Parker has to deal with both supporting a sick aunt, getting around her, working for, dealing with his peers being a flock of dicks, and of course, selling papers to the Daily Bugle's lovable, grumpy, hopefully played by J.K. Simmons again in this new universe, J. Jonah Jameson, who is apparently based on Stan Lee himself. And that's hilarious. All battling a colorful cast of villains, all but one group. It is a literal group of whom have become iconic, and even that group still gets scattered appearances today. I am not kidding with that. Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, the Lizard, and of course, upcoming movie starring Keaton shot playing Birdman for real, the Vulture. All of those debut in these issues, and most of their designs have held up. That's one of the strengths of these. The storytelling is good. The dialogue, not so much, having not aged well and basically being variations of he's a nerd when it comes to high school, and damn that Spider-Man when he's at the Daily Bugle, and I'm so old when he's at home. Yeah, the weakest part of it is the supporting cast. J. Jonah is a delight. Betty Brant, his love interest, who works as Jonah's secretary. Remember, this was a different time, and she was also a teenager. And she also got a backstory that I won't get into since it's not in this volume, but it is well done and comes up in the issue after this volume ends. She's a decent character, but standard for Stan Lee at the time, she's not exactly a strong, empowered woman. Just sort of that she's still a little more than her time, and that's interesting. His classmates are the most annoying fucking thing I've read in a comic. Well, okay, that's not true, but they do top up there. Flash Thompson would go on to local bully and king of all dickheads, would go on to be an incredibly great, awesome character later on, as well as have his own run in Venom, which I will cover during this marathon, so watch out for that. And become one of Peter's best friends. He's not a bad character, it's just here he's a one-dimensional bully who barely gets any comeuppance. Only 2 issues really have him get comeuppance. One where, in order to fuck with Peter, he plans to dress up as Spider-Man and spook him, and gets kidnapped by Doctor Doom. Yes, that's an actual thing they did. This was the Silver Age, even if it's not as weird as Bat Baby or Super Ventriloquism, there's still some weird crap over at Marvel. And the other time Peter punches him in the face, and all his classmates don't acknowledge it, because Peter was aiming the punch before he found out Flash had looked away because he got surprised by something. He still not only got to punch Flash in the face without horribly injuring him, but also got to hint to everyone that Flash was Spider-Man just to F with him, and got away with it. So yeah, Flash is just pretty much a dick. He has some little bits of redeeming quality sprinkled in, but not nearly as much as he'd get as time went on. He's just a transparent dick munch. I cannot for the life of me see why they kept him onto the college years. I see why they had him. He's a bully, and the nerds reading this were probably bullied like this. It's just really entertaining to a modern audience. And Aunt May, who would also become an excellent character, is basically just one tired, I'm old and sickly, do things for me, Peter. I mean, she's not unlikable, she's kind, she doesn't want him working this hard while going to school. And in the first issue of Amazing Spider-Man, she outright says, "Don't drop out of school. I want you to continue. It's what Uncle Ben would want." She's likable. She's just not that great a character. Her at this stage. And is more of a plot device than anything else. But if the supporting cast isn't that great, what about the villains? As I mentioned at Menagerie, all of them are awesome. Even the ones I mentioned that didn't take off, the Enforcers are great. They're basically Fancy Dan, a short guy who's a master of judo, Ox, a big dumb guy who's super strong, though by human standards, not by Amazing Spider-Man standards. And Montana, who's from Montana, so naturally he's a master of the rodeo. Along with their boss, the big man, who has an interesting looking mask, and credit where credit is due, uses Steve Ditko's uncanny facial expressions to create a truly cool thing. All the villains are well done. They're kind of your standard Silver Age, raw ha ha. They all have unique backstories. Sandman being an escaped criminal who's become infamous due to his powers and doesn't wear his typical costume, and actually does something interesting where he flees into the high school stupidly to try and hide, but then asks for his degree. And Peter's principal also gets an awesome moment in outright refusing to give him an honorary degree because, well, he's a criminal holding all his students hostage. He doesn't deserve it, and he's going to die before that happens. Thankfully, he doesn't, but different time, thankfully. Electro, while also a thug, is also fairly cool and gets to break out a bunch of criminals as well as get their loyalty, because the ones who don't listen to him end up getting caught by the cops instantly. And Doc Ock himself is even interesting. Well, again, a lot of layers later, here he's just an arrogant scientist who got fused to his tentacles and wasn't allowed to continue his work because he was in the hospital. So basically he went kind of crazy, but he provides Peter an interesting fight, and he can't just science his way out. This is all sort of the tradition of Spider-Man using whatever was on hand to win the day began, and has thankfully persevered throughout his career. Him using whatever his science skills to take down the bad guys. It's thoroughly entertaining. While the personal stuff isn't the best, it does get better with time. His relationship with Brady's interesting. Well, there is one stupid bit where she assumes, "Oh, well, you're just going after pictures because you're an action junkie." Well, people would recycle that well, especially when it was revealed Mary Jane Watson knew his identity and just the whole time just assumed he was a thrill seeker. That's also why she backed away from him a little at first. Here it just makes no sense. He's doing so to take care of his sick aunt. He's not buying a goddamn motorcycle. That's next review. But yeah, other than that, still decent, and the pathos of I am the only one of having to give up a lot of his normal life in order to save people, while still getting an odd victory because of his web slinging here and there. Two great moments being the aforementioned one with Flash, where he got one over on the dick finally. And one issue which ends with J. Jonah's mouth webbed up by Peter while he was in Spider-Man because, well, Electro attacked. Wait, no, it was the Vulture, my mistake. The Vulture attacked. Also a great villain, if not heavy on depth at this point. J. Jonah was, as you'd guess, an ungrateful dickhole, and Peter had to cozy up to someone his own age who actually gave a crap about him. And that's what made the stories better towards the end. While I still could end with a dick punch to old Peter, it was more unpredictable. The early ones end with him very sad and usually losing. Later ones Get creative. Like one opening I really liked, which was from the Sandman one, was Peter going after a bunch of criminals who hadn't done anything yet. They were just casing the joint, and given his rep, they call the police. Another thing I like that's different than modern day Spider-Man and a lot of Marvel heroes is that the police are like him. They do want to know who he is and stuff, but they don't believe a word Jonah says and are entirely appreciative of what he's doing. It's a welcome change of pace, especially weirdly since this is at the very beginning. They had good reason not to really like him later on. On what with a police officer dying under mysterious circumstances, saving his life, and another one who is close personal friends with him getting shot by a serial killer. Both stories, if I get access to the George Stacy one death, I'll definitely cover it. And I have the death of Captain Gene DeWolf, and it's a story I've wanted to read for a while and have owned for years now. So I'll definitely do that one at some point. The dialogue, segueing a bit, the dialogue isn't the best, but that really was never Stan Lee's strong suit. He was good at creating characters, working well with his artists, and creating good dialogue out of their stuff at times. But yeah, it's a bit dated, especially since he was trying to appeal to the teen crowd and thus used outdated slang and references, like Aunt May's infamous calling pancakes wheat cakes. And yeah, I had to look that up. I thought wheat cakes were just some old-timey thing made to sound her old, used to make her sound old, but no. It's just pancakes. It's just pancakes. Why couldn't you use pancakes, Stan? Stan in a pan, which I'm going to call you from now on because that is awesome. I can't believe I just thought that up. But yeah. Overall, I'd say Marvel Masterworks Spider-Man Volume 1, or just however you get the issues, or it's through an Epic collection, or if you find an old Essential trade in black and white, it's worth it. They're really decent stories. Some don't hold up as well as others, and as I said, the supporting cast is fairly limp for the most part at this stage. But they're still enjoyable, well, web-slinging action. With some action better than even some modern comics and some really iconic art by Steve Ditko. He's not the best at faces, I'll fully admit, but when it comes to character design and action and creativity in fight sequences, he and Stan Lee are among the best. Peter Parker started out on a high, only got better from there, and is now in the stratosphere. And we're all better off for it. I'm Jake Mangley, and that's my opinion. Don't forget to like and subscribe.